Hammers are one of those units that gets constantly disrespected and underrated, and I recently disrespected the Dwarfs deeply, so I probably should do something to help rectify that. Today we're going to watch these Hammers go up against the Dark Elves here, and of course Hammers do have some pretty glaring downsides: lowish melee defense and vulnerability to missiles for the cost. It's definitely pretty bad, but of course they've got 41 armor-piercing weapon damage per swing, which is a heinous amount of armor-piercing. 55 total weapon damage, huge overall. It's absolutely massive. And to help support them, we've got some Thunderers already shooting up those Harpies, some Slayers also to protect this flank here, some Dwarf Warriors through the main line. Yeah, basically all Dwarf Warriors. We've got Thorek Ironbrow, the regiment, sorry, not a regiment of renown, but rather great weapon, Thane. Even though all Thanes have pure armor piercing now, he's still quite good with very good stats. Frostbite, of course, massive armor piercing damage. Felix to help support them, and that's pretty much it. We've also got some Iron Drakes here. Then for the Dark Elves, these Harpies going to be flying in, trying to shut down those missile units very quickly. The cannon, of course, of the Dwarfs, Gyrocopter as well, shooting in already, and the Cold One Chariots over here are taking the brunt of that cannon fire. We've got some more Harpies, Sorceress, Malice Darkblade, Bleak Swords, and some Executioners for the infantry line. And the Harpies are going to be thrown in almost immediately. Another Cold One Chariot on the far side. They will be routed off in a pretty big hurry, but at the same time, they're going to help kind of disrupt these missiles and at least force them to move. You see the artillery crew gets dismounted from their guns here. It's going to have to go remount them, so at least temporarily shutting them down. They're also pressuring the gyros here in the sky, so pretty good stuff. Both cannons actually taking some significant damage. Nice bit of shades as well is going to hit those Hammers. Of course, they're less vulnerable than other elite infantry to magic damage, but certainly still vulnerable to it, as all elite infantry are. But 35% spell resistance, with, I believe, a little bit of extra coming in from Thorek there. Anyway, it's quite a bit. Definitely makes them quite tanky in that instance. And now immediately the Thunderers and the Cannons can start to respond here. Hammer is just staying tight right now, which is probably the right call. Let these other units kind of go out and fight against the Bleak Swords. Argonath Executioners are going to be pretty rough, but we do see some Rune of Doom here to help at least beat down the Bleak Swords. These Cold One Chariots are also going to get through and get on those Iron Drakes. Give them a little beating and shut them down momentarily. Iron Drakes will be able to survive that initial charge, though. And see Slayers rushing in here with these Dwarf Warriors. See if those Cold One Chariots get bogged down. These units are staying on the move, but still in a dangerous position here with the Hammers close by. Ooh, looks like the Hammers are, yes, going to stay in the near position and try and get some hits. So we'll watch, and yeah, of course, the Thunderers will take that charge. Even still, take some damage. Doesn't look like the Hammers managed to get too many hits there on the Chariots, but it's something. Argonath Executioners in the front line got broken by the Hero Squad. Felix, Thorek, and Hans all have good armor-piercing damage and splash attacks. They are able to do a lot of damage there. Murderous Prowess pops off for the Dark Elves, and their Witch is just going to get burned. That's right, the Sorceress getting absolutely crispy by these Iron Drakes, although Malice does manage to get in and shut them down. And here comes the point where the Slayers and the Hammerers can work together to absolutely destroy Malice. That weapon damage in particular of the Hammers should be very good here. They do have a melee defense debuff there from the Demon's Curse from Malice, but let's see. Right now it looks like they actually have an attack order on the Sorceress, which might be a little bit of a mistake, but yeah, you notice how the Dwarf player here turns and immediately is going to re-engage on Malice there, and in a nice blocky formation so they can try and get a full surround. Meanwhile here, Felix, the other Dwarf heroes, trying their best to try and keep this infantry push up, but the Argonath Executioners are a very tough opponent. And most of the missile troops for Dwarfs have been shut down at this point, but we do get a Rune of Breaking, increasing the damage of these Hammerers even further, up to 69 weapon strength. Very nice. And they're going to just be chunking Malice down in a big hurry. Very good melee attack for Dwarfs as well, and with that Rune of Doom also putting them up to 71 with Rune of Breaking still active. It's an absolutely huge power spike, and Malice is just getting the brakes beaten off of him just absolutely pancaked and mashed into a fine powder, which is definitely what he deserves. We look at the rest of the battlefield. The Dwarf Hero Squad here is continuing to hold out against the Executioners. The Cold One Chariots are using their crossbows to try and fire in, get a little bit of armor-piercing damage, which is definitely a good call. The Iron Drakes are also getting finished off here by the Harpies, so just generally, Dark Elves are doing a good job chasing routing units. Dwarfs are getting very thin on the ground, but they've already forced Malice into the Zarkan transformation. And he's just going to keep on fighting these hammers, it looks like. Maybe trying to escape there, but in the process of doing so has once again gotten himself fully surrounded by the hammers. And he doesn't actually have the mass to be able to pull through them in this instance. Just pretty hilarious. To be honest, Malice is quite a powerful character, and watching him just suffer against these hammers is quite rewarding, I have to say. But anyway, Dwarf Hero Squad is also suffering a similar fate, but at least the three of them do have, each other to support. They're not quite as fully surrounded. Notice how the cannon also is kind of protecting the back and flank of a couple of these unit models, at least temporarily. As they fight near these cannons, that will benefit them. Just in general, blocking the enemy unit models there as the single entities fight. Classic dwarf tactic of leaving your artillery pieces as terrain. But there you go. The hammers do manage to survive as Malice pulls away. Argonath Executioners probably should have been detached to go fight the hammers, but now we get to see them get a nice charge, potentially into the flank of these Argonath Executioners if they're not going to get the counter charge here. Still in somewhat of a blocky formation, so it's not going to be the best charge in the world, but nonetheless, they do have a pretty decent charge bonus, 24, on top of their 48 melee attack, and will definitely be enough to put a hurt, especially with the heroes nearby. Nice little chariot charge from the back, though. Dark Elves are not out of this yet by any means. Malice was suffering pretty badly in that engagement, but as the dwarf characters kind of get a little bit strung out here, a little bit separated by the chariots, he's going to try and play his cards once again. Reaper of Souls, Bloodstorm, heal himself, give himself damage resistance. Hans is going to collapse here, as will the hammers, and Felix probably in just a moment. This Pit of Shades is going to mostly be a miss on the hammers. We'll get a few of their unit models in its area of effect, but just a lot of dwarfs screaming right now. A lot of angry Dawi. Dark Elves have certainly taken many lives this day, but the hammers, once again, Rune of Speed to buff them up, and they just smash Zarkan into the ice. And now it's just these last Executioners, so we'll watch the dwarfs make their final stand. Thorek, of course, the powerhouse that he always is, but especially Thorek supporting hammerers, and just in general, support abilities on hammers to increase their value, especially trading into single entities, especially because dwarfs don't have, for like infantry and cavalry single entities, they don't actually have the greatest answers in the world. You don't have something like a Spirit Leech or what have you, but we'll fast forward through this last dwarf pursuit as the Dark Elf player tries to reorganize their forces a little bit. Nice little Rune of Wrath and Ruin actually breaks those bleak swords. And, yeah, the chariots are going to charge in, immediately get terrified. It's pretty much a lost cause for the Dark Elves, but they are nonetheless going to try. But, yeah, dwarfs, I mean, you do have, like, Gotrek and some other characters that are decent duelists against other single-entity characters. Monsters, you can shoot, right? Any kind of single-entity monsters that's big enough, they have pretty much no problem shooting. But the hammers here show a kind of niche use case and just absolutely beating the brakes off of a powerful cavalry lord. Giant Slayers would also be a decent option, but hammers are just going to be a little bit more survivable against, missile fire. They're also going to be a little bit more generalist and better at fighting different types of infantry. Giant Slayers can certainly deal damage against infantry, but they also take a lot of damage in the process, and it's not nearly as efficient. Whereas hammers, definitely, they do take damage as well, but less so with that high armor. And here they get an insane amount of value. Definitely help carry this game significantly with support of Thorek, who himself and his other characters also do a great job. And that's pretty much where the dwarf value comes from. Some of the dwarf warriors manage to trade cost effectively with Thorek's support as well, which is nice. And then also the Iron Drake's getting some pretty good value there, roasting out the caster is definitely necessary. Argonath Executioners managed to do a pretty decent job, all things considered. The Dark Elf player did do a good job of shutting down these missiles and limiting their value to a pretty fair degree. As a result, the high value infantry here does okay. It doesn't quite pay for itself. I guess if you average out all three, maybe it's like right on the money. But anyway, Cold One Chariot also, one pays for itself, one does not. The Bleak Swords are just kind of here, but really where he ended up losing out is not getting as much value as he needed to for Malice and the Caster. Ultimately, Shadows is okay, Pit of Shades is fine, but it's really not that great against the Dwarfs, and in general, probably go with a different Lore of Magic. It's hard to say, really. If you had access to Lore of Metal, I might advocate for that, but I don't think Dark Elves, yeah, they don't have access to Lore of Metal, unfortunately. They really should. But, I don't know, maybe Fire, honestly. Fireball's pretty good if you side-shotting through units, or, I have to kind of stop and think about it a little bit. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. What would you take for Lore of Magic with Dark Elves into Dwarfs? Just generally, what do you think about this matchup and hammers in general? So hopefully you guys enjoyed this. If you like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.